This is Stephen DePace of Flipper, and you are listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Antita, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Steve DePace from Flipper.
Promoting some upcoming shows on the West Coast and East Coast, and also what he's got going on here for a reissue.
A re-release of Generic, the first album on Superior Viaduct Records.
Let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Stephen, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Hunty.
Steve, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we're excited to have you. So let's get right into this. So Flipper's going to have a busy schedule in May. You're going to be playing live shows in Fresno, West Hollywood, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. What can Flipper fans expect from these upcoming shows?
Well, we're going to be working with Matt Corvette from the band Pissed Jeans. He's an old pal of ours. Cool. We played with Pissed Jeans 20 years ago in Brooklyn. And we loved those guys, man. They're just such a great band. So, and I've kind of kept up with them. I follow them on socials, and I see when they're posting and when they're playing and touring and whatnot. And I still have a poster from the show we did together in Brooklyn. I brought a big old poster home with me as a memento. But yeah, it's not too often when you're touring and playing with a lot of different bands. To be honest, most of the bands are just, okay at best. But, sometimes you come across a band, you play with a band that really stands out. They were definitely one of those bands. So when it came time for me, recently I decided to, reissue the back catalog with Superior Viaduct Records and put a band together and get out and tour to support it. He came to mind, and I got a hold of him, and he said he'd love to do it, and he's really enthusiastic about it and stuff. So we're looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Well, yeah, I guess talk a little bit more about Kelly Mayo and John Kelly, some other band members you got touring with you.
Yeah. So, again, it's not an easy thing when you're putting a band together. Yeah. You really want to, curate and pick the right people as best you can. And with Kelly Mayo from Skating Polly, I'm a huge fan of their band, and we became pals a little bit. Actually, I met her through David Yao when David Yao was singing with us.
Yeah.
Actually, we played a show together in Atlanta. Flipper and Skating Polly were playing on the same night in the same venue, in different rooms in Atlanta. And that's when I met her and the band. And so, subsequently, we became friends, and she actually mentioned to me at one point in time, a couple of years ago, she said, hey, if you guys ever need a bass player, let me know. I'd love to do it. So I had that in the back of my mind, and she's a great bass player. She has great stage presence. She's very magnetic and whatnot. She's really good. And then John Kelly, I came across him when his band, The Flood, he's in a 2-piece band, guitars and drums. They record all the time, and they put records out all the time. And they covered a Flipper song and sent me the record. And I checked it out, and I was very impressed with him as a guitar player. He's very unique and different, and he's just got a big, giant wall of guitar sound, noise, grunge. He's really great. So I kind of had him in the back of my mind, and when I decided to do this, I got a hold of both of them individually, and they were both totally into it. So, and John was funny. He said, I told myself when I was a kid, he's been a Flipper fan forever since he was a kid. And he said, I told myself when I was a kid, if Flipper ever calls, say yes. That cracked me up. But, we've done like 2 shows together, and, without Matt, we've done 2 shows as a 3-piece, and, it's just worked out so well, and I can't wait to incorporate Matt into it, adding a whole nother element to it. It's going to be really good.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the Flipper influence. Yeah. And, the Flipper influence has been widespread to bands all over the United States and in other countries, but, you kind of have the luxury now. You can recruit some high quality players now. And upon that, you also had Mike Watt in the band for a short time. I guess talk about, your thoughts on the influence that Flipper has had on the punk rock community.
Yeah. I think it all started with the singles we were putting out, primarily when we did the song Sex Bomb that came out on a 7-inch single way back in around 1980 or so, 80, 81. That song really caught fire and got play across the country on all the college radio stations. Yeah. And it set the stage for us to go out and tour behind that record and behind that single. And Jella Biafra also did us a great service when Dead Kennedys went out and toured. They toured the States prior to us, and we were for a while there, his favorite band. And so he went around the country talking about us to media, radio, press, saying that we were his favorite band. So that coupled with the Sex Bomb single that came out, when we toured the country, all of our shows were sold out. So it kind of started with that. And then when Generic came out, that was also a big hit. And, we toured the country behind that. That came out in 82, and we had a big touring year in 83. We toured a lot, 82, 83, kind of behind that record. And, I didn't really know or understand the depth or the widespread influence that we had until really years later. When I saw, it really hit me when Kurt Cobain, made a Flipper t-shirt and was on Saturday Night Live and was on magazine covers and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So all of a sudden Flipper kind of went mainstream, but, as a t-shirt. And, and then these guys were all talking about us too. So we were all of a sudden in like every music history book. I've got a whole bookshelf full of music history books, and Flipper's in all of them. So, it hit me years later that, we had this kind of influence across the board with so many bands. Although, there was one other thing too that took place, in the early 80s. There was a Boston radio station when Sex Bomb came out, that same single I'm talking about. there was a Boston radio station that promoted a thing they were going to do where they asked all of their, all the bands in their local area to send in a cassette tape of their cover of Sex Bomb. And they got so many submissions. It was initially going to be a 2-hour show of one DJ was going to play all these cassette tapes of local bands doing Sex Bomb. They got so many submissions that it became a 48-hour marathon over a whole weekend. And people from Boston were calling me, telling me about this, and I couldn't believe it. But, so we are definitely, that song in particular is one of the most covered songs around.
Yeah.
And, the Melvins covered Flipper. Sacrifice was kind of their favorite song to cover, although they've covered other Flipper songs. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we worked together on a 10-inch vinyl limited edition release that came out on Amphetamine Reptile. And Ted and myself played with Dale and Buzz on this record, and we did all Flipper songs. Yeah, we covered 3 Flipper songs and wrote a new one. And so there's 4 songs on that EP. And Buzz said he wrote, we did a song called Hot Fish that we all kind of wrote together on the spot. Anyway, so yeah, it's amazing to me and I love it. I can't say I don't. I love it that we were such an influence. I mean, it's pretty great. And, as you say, it affords us, it opens a lot up, opens a lot of doors and opens up a lot when it comes to doing things and finding people to play with and places to play and things to do. Flipper opens doors, and that's a pretty cool thing. Yeah, we've had the great fortune to be able to work with people like Mike Watt and David Yao and Chris Novoselic and so many others over the years. Moby jumped on stage with us one time. He's a huge fan. And Chris Novoselic joined the band for a couple of years, and we recorded a studio record and a live record with Jack Endino on engineering. And that was really an amazing experience. We got to hang out with Chris up at his ranch up there in Washington State. It was like band camp. We would go up there for 5-6 days, and hang out. And his wife is an amazing cook, and she would cook us these wonderful meals, and we'd play music all day and rehearse and write songs and record and stuff, and for like 4 or 5 days in a row. And then he would come down to the Bay Area. He has his own plane, so he would fly down to the Bay Area and hang out with us for 3 or 4 days. And we had a rehearsal spot in Oakland, and we would work there as well. And we did shows up and down the Pacific, the West Coast, and we got out to Europe and did some shows out there. We played with the Melvins out there as well. We did a big festival in England called All Tomorrow's Parties, and we played in Ireland, and it was really fun. We had good times. And Watt came with us out to Europe one time. We did a whole full tour with him, and he's a real kick. He's so funny to hang out with, and he's such a great bass player. That was a really great experience for me, and for me as a drummer too. He has this thing where and it's a true thing in musicianship, like in bands and whatnot, like the rhythm section. Theoretically, the rhythm section should be pretty locked tight, the bass and drums. And he used to tell me that. He would say, the bass and drums got to be locked. And then he would stand right next to me to make sure that the bass and drums were locked.
Fantastic.
In this day and age, the music industry isn't what it was. And we talk to some bands and, they don't, they tour, or they don't really want to do any more albums or anything like that. But can you talk a little bit from at least your perspective with Flipper? I mean, you got a whole new crew going on the road. What motivates you to keep it going?
Well, the love of playing music for one, and when our guitar player Ted told me that, he needed to retire because he's got some health issues.
Yeah.
I was pretty depressed for a couple of years because, I loved getting out and playing, and we were playing. We were out touring and playing and whatnot. And, he had to retire, unfortunately, because he's got some health issues, and he's kind of, up in age. So he's decided to retire. So it was kind of a bit of a shock, and I didn't really expect it. And in fact, we were planning a whole tour. We had an East Coast tour set up, ready to go. And he had, like, all of a sudden, these, breathing issues and heart palpitations and stuff, like, one day. And it really scared him. So, he went to doctors and had himself all checked out and tested and all this kind of stuff. And he's got some lung problems from smoking for years and years and years. Don't smoke, kids. Anyway, so he had to retire. And that pretty much, that really bummed me out. I was very depressed for a couple of years. And then I just decided, and this record company had been after me for a couple of years to reissue the back catalog. And so I decided, you know what? Instead of sitting around being depressed, I'm just going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, happens. And so I called up the label. I said, let's put these records out, and I'll put a band together, and we'll get out, and we'll support the, the reissues and stuff. And I'll just relaunch Flipper and just kind of see what happens. And so we did the deal, and Generic was just reissued over this last weekend on Record Store Day worldwide. And it's a beautiful thing. Came out on this beautiful translucent yellow vinyl and with great packaging and new liner notes. And Superior Viaduct is a great independent record label, and they're respected among their peers. So anyway, they did a great job with putting it out, and it's been great, getting a lot of love worldwide. I saw a lot of people posting. Different record shops around the world were posting it and stuff. And anyway, so and I put this band together, and we kick off this tour in Fresno on April 29. So everything's falling into place. And so I'd love for people to come out and, check us out and see what we got going. And I promise it's going to be great.
Fantastic. Too bad you're not coming to Chicago.
I know.
We will come to Chicago. You know what? Last time we played Chicago, we played Reggie's.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know I know, and I loved it too. I will never forget their motto. We're not happy till you're not happy.
That's right.
That's the club motto. Anyway, Martin Atkins is a good buddy of mine, the drummer from PIL and so many other bands. He lives in Chicago, and he came out and we did a double drummer thing on a few songs with him at Reggie's last time we played there. So next time we play, we'll probably do the same thing. And, he's got that great museum, post-punk industrial museum there.
Yes.
Have you guys been out to see that?
I have not, but we interviewed him before, yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, he's such a great guy. I love him. He's awesome.
He is. Let's get into the set list. When it comes to set list design, talk to us a little bit more about putting a set list together for these upcoming shows. Is it going to vary at all?
Okay, we've got the set list together, and most of the set list is generic Flipper, since it's just been released and reissued. Most of the set list is generic Flipper. We have we've added a Pissed Jeans song to the set list, a song called L Word. We asked Matt Corvette if there was a particular song he'd like to do on the tour, and so he came up with that one, and it's very Flipper-esque. And so we will be performing that one song from Pissed Jeans. And I think we're going to probably put, I think Ha Ha's on the set list.
Nice.
But most of the set list is generic, basically.
Fantastic.
Well, I mean, Ha Ha Ha, I love that song. Unsane, we just recently interviewed them, and they do a really cool cover of that song.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They sent me that. They sent me a couple. They did that several years ago. But Yeah, they let me know when they did that cover, and they sent it to me, and I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I love those guys.
You know, when it comes to reissuing older material, and pardon my ignorance towards all of this, but you know, what is the process for getting generic put back out there? Was it much on your end of things, or in the lawyers of things, or was it strictly the record company? How does it all work?
Well, you know, obviously the first thing that, you know, there has to be interest in doing it. And there's a lot of labels, to be honest, that were after me to put generic out specifically. And I didn't want to just cherry pick that one record. I wanted the old Subterranean catalog, which is the original catalog of records we put out with Subterranean Records from San Francisco back in the day between 1980 and 86 or 7. Mm-hmm. We put out 4 albums in total. One was a double live record. One was a compilation record of all of our singles and other compilation tracks. And then there was Generic and Gone Fishing. And there was one other record, or I should say an album's worth of songs that we recorded that never came out. So among those Subterranean recordings, there was an album that was never before released from back in the 80s. So that was part of the deal. And Superior Viaduct is based in San Francisco, and they're very enthusiastic about, you know, and they're very sincere and enthusiastic, and, you know, they don't want to do it just to do it. They want to do it very, you know, as best as it can be done. And so I went with them because they were, you know, the best option really. And so, basically it's, you know, you start with that. There's a label that wants to do it. You choose the label, you make sure it's the right label for it, because, you know, you're handing it over to them and you're hoping they handle it right, mm-hmm. you know, with the respect it deserves. So, they were the right label for sure. And then you have to get the material. So wherever your tapes or your hard drive or whatever it is, you know, you have to get that together, and then you decide on the artwork and packaging and all the rest of it. So in this case, we want to stay true to, and the label wanted to keep the same artwork for the covers and, you know, the same inserts and that sort of thing, and add to whatever was already there. So we got someone new to write liner notes. And, but yeah, the packaging, the covers are the same original covers, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I mean, the vinyl is nice colored vinyl, you know, so, you know, we made it special like that. The initial pressing is a limited edition, translucent yellow vinyl. Later on, we'll come out with regular black vinyl, and there'll be a CD, component as well that will come out later this year in November, I think. So there'll be a black vinyl edition and a CD edition that will come out in November, I think it is. But yeah, basically the process is you assemble your recordings and your artwork, and you have a label that wants to put it out, and you just make sure everything's quality. Sometimes when bands or labels do reissues, they change up the artwork and that kind of stuff, but you know, they wanted to keep it authentic and, you know, original, stick to the original artwork on all these records. And so we wanted to do the same. So, you know, it worked out. So that's what we're doing.
You know, and I also noticed too that a lot of bands, when they do reissue albums, they'll stick on, you know, 2 or 3 bonus live tracks. Was that ever an option for you guys?
With these reissues, I don't think so. No, but that did happen once, I recall. There was a classic record that we put out many years ago on the label ROIR, R-O-I-R, Reach Out International Records out of New York. They were famous for putting records out on cassettes. That's how they started in the early 80s. and Bad Brains was their very first release. And all of their records came out on cassette, and they were all live recordings, as I recall. Anyway, we did a recording with them called Blowin' Chunk, and it was a live recording at CBGB's and came out on that label. And they reissued it numerous times. First, it came out on cassette. Then they put it out on CD, and we added bonus tracks when they put it out on CD. So I think we added like 4 bonus tracks to it. But yeah, that's the only time we've ever done that sort of thing, is with just that one specific record.
Oh, very good.
Well, not to get too somber, but I mean, Bruce Luce passed away in 2025, but he was a lead singer from like 78 to 2015-ish or so. Can you reflect back a little bit on his time with the band?
Oh, man. Yeah. Bruce, we kicked it off in 1979. That's when Flipper got started. And Bruce wasn't the original singer.
Right.
There was another guy who was with us for a few months, Ricky Sleeper from a band called The Sleepers, Ricky Williams. He was a phenomenal frontman, but he was just so messed up on drugs, we just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
So Bruce came into the picture, and I consider him to be an original member because the first guy only lasted a few months. But the first guy did give us our name.
Yeah.
And he was, so messed up on drugs, he couldn't remember very many things. And Flipper was one word and one name he could remember. And he named all of his pets Flipper. I found this out many, many years later from his old roommates and whatnot. He had a bunch of pets. They were all named Flipper. And one day at rehearsal, when we were deciding what to call the band, he was the first one to say, "How about Flipper?" And we all went with it. So anyway, Bruce, I got to say, not only Bruce, but Bruce, Ted, and Will Shatter, all 3 of those guys were absolutely brilliant. I listened to the records we made together, and they hold up after all these decades, and they're just phenomenal records. The songs are phenomenal. Our performances on those songs are phenomenal. And, none of us really knew what we were doing. Ted was the only one who had any formal music training, but but I believe it was on piano and or synthesizers that he had his formal music training. So he knew nothing of guitar. And, he picked up an electric guitar one day at a friend's place and just started making noise on it. But having had formal background in music and theory and all that, he figured out what chords and notes were, right? And he was the only one in the band that knew what an A chord from an F sharp, from a D, from an E. None of us, the rest of us knew any of that. Yeah. And the 2 guys, Bruce and Will, who both wrote bass lines and lyrics and sang, they, switched singing, and they both wrote lyrics and they both wrote bass lines. They didn't know anything about music, either one of them. Although Bruce had vocal training when he was a kid. I think he was in a boys' choir. And he kind of knew what he was doing vocally. But basically, those guys would just put notes together that they thought sounded good, And it was amazing to me. So I don't know how we pulled it off, but we really, there's a lot to be said about chemistry.
Oh, sure.
And we fought, we argued, we had all those issues and problems that every band has and whatever throughout the years and decades. But, the music we created was phenomenal. And I think maybe some of that friction that you have maybe plays into that. I don't know. But anyway, I listen to the Flipper stuff. I don't listen to it very much, but when I do listen to it, I'm amazed at how good it is. I think we got lucky. But Bruce was a real character, man. He was something. He had his moments of genius, and he had his moments of intolerable. He had all of that and everything in between. So, I don't know what else to say, but, he passed away from, I believe he had a stroke and he had a heart attack, out of the blue kind of, sort of. And, it's sad.
Yeah.
So,
well, on to better things here. So, Love, and you've touched upon this, earlier on in the interview, but Love was the last Flipper studio album. It was unique in regards to you had Chris Novoselic on bass, employed Jack Endino as the producer, and
right.
I guess maybe clarify a little bit about the writing and recording of that album. Jack Endino is a highly regarded producer from all types of genres of music.
Yeah. Well, just briefly, I'll tell the story about how Chris ended up in Flipper. We had been, actually a friend of mine from London emailed me and said, hey, there's this great festival that's being curated by Thurston Moore. You should try to get on it. And so I figured out how to, Sonic Youth was coming through San Francisco. They were going to play at the Fillmore in San Francisco. I got myself and Ted on the guest list, and we went and we spoke with Thurston and asked him about getting on that festival. And he said, we'd love to have you. So done deal. I said, Thurston, there's one problem. We need a bass player. Our bass player that we had been playing with had the one who replaced Will Shatter. Will Shatter died in 87.
Yeah.
And we had a few other bass players playing with us over the years after that. But anyway, at that moment in time, we didn't have a bass player. So I said, we need a bass player. And I was thinking about Chris Novoselic. I said that to Thurston. He goes, oh, man, that's a great idea. I'll call him for you. So he did, and called me a few days later and said, hey, I spoke to Chris and he's into it. He's going to call you. I gave him your number. So Chris did call me, and he said that he was honored to be asked to be in the band. He said he loved Flipper and, told me that Nirvana loved Flipper and, Kurt and all that. Everyone loved Flipper. And he said he loved that record Generic and was honored to be asked. And so lo and behold, I told him about this festival, and that's how it started. We all went out and played this festival in London called All Tomorrow's Parties. We added a little European tour to that. We played other dates. We played some dates with the Melvins. We went to Ireland and played a few dates over there. So at the end of that run of shows, Chris said to us, he said, hey, this has been really fun. We've been playing all the Flipper classics. Why don't we write some new material? So sounded good to us. So we went up to his property there and set up Bandcamp, and we started writing songs. And we didn't have a drum kit up there. Chris got on the phone to his manager and said, we need drums. And the next day, a brand new drum kit arrived from Tama. And anyway, so we wrote a record. And he said, I'm going to call Jack, and we'll get him down there, because they had remained friends. And Jack, used to visit Chris regularly on his property. And he was building a little motorcycle, a little dirt bike out there in the garage and all kind of stuff. And so he was, still very friendly and close with Chris. And so and his studio was up in Seattle. So he would travel from Seattle down to the southwestern part of Washington State. And anyway, so Jack came into the mix, and we wrote this whole record, and Jack brought his recording equipment down, and we set up in a room and recorded this record. And at the same time, while we were recording that record, we did a few shows. We played a live show in Seattle and a live show in Portland. And Jack brought his recording gear to both of those shows. So he recorded both of those shows, those live shows. Plus we did the whole studio record, all at the same time. And so we ended up with a live album called Fight and a studio album called Love. Nice. And that's kind of how it all came together. And Jack was very excited working with us. He thought the material was great, and he had a lot of fun working with us and, putting the record together and stuff. And we had a blast. It was really fun.
So cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess We ask guitarists and bass players all the time about taking their equipment on small tours like you're doing with this upcoming tour. How does it work for you with your drums? Are you bringing your own set, or are you using drums that are there?
On the West Coast run of shows, I'll be bringing my own equipment. We're all going to be bringing our own equipment. However, when we later in the month, toward the end of the month, when we fly out to the East Coast, when we do that, we're going to be borrowing equipment out there. So, when you're a professional musician, these situations come up. So you have to learn how to just wing it on whatever kind of gear's in front of you. So I can make it work with whatever kind of drum kit they put in front of me. Not necessarily preferable, but, you have to be able to make it work. So, that's what we do.
Sweet.
And we're playing some really cool shows on the East Coast. We're doing a festival called Total Bummer in New York with Dinosaur Jr. and some other great bands. And then we're playing Philadelphia, which is Matt Corvette's hometown where he lives. And we're playing Baltimore.
Nice.
And we're doing a little, you guys remember, what was the name of that club in Trenton, New Jersey back in the day? City Garden.
Yes.
You guys remember the legendary City Gardens? Well, the guy who ran City Gardens has a little record shop in New Jersey now where it's called Randy Now's Man Cave is what it's called. And, the guy who used to run City Gardens is now doing this little record shop, and he has live bands play. So
I wanted to ask you one more question before we let you go for the evening. As far as the Flipper Vault is concerned of unreleased material, is there quite a few tracks that are still out there that you guys are kind of holding on to before maybe somehow, some way releasing one more album?
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I didn't clarify what was going on with that. That is going to be part of this reissue deal with Superior Viaduct. I believe there's 8 songs, if I'm not mistaken, 7 or 8, songs that were never released. And they made the rounds on cassette. Like, amongst back in the day, cassette, collectors and guys that would trade cassettes and stuff way back in the 80s and whatnot. Those songs made the rounds on cassette, but there was no mixed versions. Those were all kind of rough mixes from the studio. And we went in some years ago and we mixed those tracks and we kind of sat on them. And then finally, Superior Viaduct, as part of this reissue deal, that's going to be so there is one completely unreleased record, all new tracks, that will be coming out, as part of this deal. There's a total of 5 albums that will be reissued as part of this, reissue contract deal we did with Superior Viaduct. So, that particular album, we have to figure out what the title's going to be, and there's going to be new artwork, cause it's a brand new record, but it's unreleased material from 1984, 83, 84. I think it might have been recorded in 83. And it was part of the Gone Fishing recording sessions. So our second studio album called Gone Fishing came out, and the unreleased tracks were part of those recording sessions. So, and they're all great tracks. Going to be fun to put that one out.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
The tour, if anybody wants to go to, the Flipper Instagram page is _FlipperOfficial_, or my own Facebook page, Stephen DePace, STEPHEN DEPACE on Facebook. Anyway, the tour stuff is listed on that, and we are the one of the shows that kind of stands out on the tour is the Los Angeles show, which we're making a very special kind of event. That's going to be on May 7th at the Roxy, the iconic, legendary, historical Roxy on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. So May 7th at the Roxy, if you're in Los Angeles or can make your way to Los Angeles, come on out for that. Other than that, Generic is out in record stores worldwide. Generic Flipper, the classic Flipper album. And, that's about it. Really appreciate you guys talking to me. It's been really great talking to you guys. Nothing Shocking podcast.
Well, we appreciate your time. Yeah. It was an honor to have you on tonight.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
This is how things are going to work out. Jeff, the editing wizard over here, is going to take off all of our coughs, all of our flubs, and he's going to make us sound great. He's going to make us sound like $1 million.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Stephen, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was an honor. We'll be in touch with you this weekend with the episode. And like I said, please share it wherever you possibly can. We appreciate it.
I will do that, of course. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Have a good luck.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If they ever take from you, then you plug out.